Welcome everybody to, I think, the 5th week of Strengthening Families. My name is Katie Warren. I'm with the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP. I added all of you to my Monday WASA email, so you may have heard from me just this morning, and I encourage you, if you received that, to attend any one of the other things that we have going on during the week, including our weekly COVID call or the staff meetups, and I think we're about to start parent meetups as well. So that might be fun. Haven't done that yet because I'm a little overwhelmed by our infant toddler virtual conference at the moment, but maybe starting next week. So welcome to Victoria. I've got you all muted, but you can unmute yourselves and you can also use the chat. I'm going to be on another call, so Victoria, you're going to have to kind of monitor the chat as well. I apologize for that being a little more challenging today, but I will let you guys get started and welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Katie, and I will do my absolute best to help with the chat. I'm still learning all of this, even though we are in the 5th week. Managing it on one screen can sometimes be a little bit difficult. And additionally, I have my daughter next to me playing a video game on the computer. Well, I guess it's a computer game, but so I'm trying my best to be focused. But the reason I mention that is because if you have children around that require your attention, please feel free to deal with that. It is absolutely appropriate given the circumstances where we're all working from home, or we are home because that's where we live. So I will go ahead and start the presentation. Let me bring it up. Okay, give me just 1 second here to move the chat box on top, which I learned last week to do. Okay, and there will be some times while I'm speaking that I ask for you to participate or to leave a message in the chat box, and I welcome you to do that. But you may also unmute yourself and say something if you'd like to actually physically say something. So please take that opportunity. I'll give you a little bit of space to do so, but sometimes I think it's nice to be able to type it. So really, it's just your preference. Additionally, if you do choose to speak up, please remember that we do have an interpreter on the line. So we want to make sure that she understands or has the time to interpret what we're saying. So speak slowly. So the last 5 weeks, we have been covering what are the Strengthening Families protective factors. And this week, we are talking about social and emotional competence of children. My name is Victoria Hilt, as Katie said, and I am a certified trainer with the Children's Trust Fund Alliance in Strengthening Families, bringing the protective factors to life in your work. I prefer to say it's bringing it to life in your life because some of us are not necessarily working with families directly in a descriptive role, but we are just parents in the community, or we are a community person who is concerned about the well-being of the children in our community. And I believe that we all play a part. So it's really about bringing the protective factors to life in your daily life. I'm also the co-chair for this same Children's Trust Fund Alliance Parent Partnership Council. And we advise the Children's Trust Fund Alliance on ways to help children and families prevent child abuse and neglect. Each week, I like to start out kind of covering the protective factors, what they are, and a way to remember them. So if you have been with us all these weeks, then you'll probably remember it. But if not, I'm going to do it for you so that you know it. If you do know it and you have a webcam, I hope that you'll do it with me. But how we remember the 5 protective factors are with our hand. And we do that with social and emotional competence, of children with our thumb, because the thumbs up is one of the first ways that we visually communicate when we're learning our emotions. And I believe that you should see that on the screen right now. Our index finger represents knowledge of parenting and child development, which we will be covering next week. Our middle finger represents social connections, because it should never stand alone. We all need a positive social network. Our ring finger represents parental resiliency, because your first commitment must be to yourself in order to be strong for others. And your pinky finger signifies concrete support in times of need, because it is the smallest finger and reminds us that we all need help sometimes. I personally love this poster because it was created by parents for parents to help them remember what the 5 protective factors are, and have it be something that you can do anywhere, anytime, and always have that available for your memory. This same parent group created posters for each individual protective factor, and they are available at the website that is on the screen. If you're calling in, the website is www.whatmakesyourfamilystrong.org. So again, that's www.whatmakesyourfamilystrong.org. And they have the posters available for download. They're available in English and in Spanish, and I love that they're parent-based and they were created by parents. So we're talking about social and emotional competence today, and this protective factor is one of the few protective factors, is the only one of the 5 protective factors that address issues with children specifically. The other protective factors are intended to sort of speak to parents and offer suggestions and strategies for how they can strengthen their families. This specific protective factor addresses the importance of helping children become more capable of handling life's challenges socially and emotionally as they grow. Children's social and emotional competence is seen in their ability to communicate clearly, recognize and regulate their emotions, establish and maintain relationships with others, and engage in problem solving and conflict resolution. These competencies emerge gradually as a natural developmental process, but are greatly influenced by the environment that we're in. And I think it's interesting that this specific protective factor actually addresses the things that we've spoken about the last 5 weeks. So being able to communicate clearly affects our social connections and our concrete support. Recognize and regulate your emotions definitely has a lot to do with how well you handle your resiliency, or how you show your resiliency in your life. Maintaining relationships with others, that's your social connections. And engaging in problem solving and conflict resolution is also social connections. So as you can see, the other protective factors kind of start building towards the social and emotional competency of children. When we start using the protective factors, our children start using the protective factors. Each week we talk about the essential elements or the common threads of the protective factors and how they can be helpful. This training would normally take about 2.5 hours to go through, and I'm just pulling some things out for you to hear in this 1 hour segment. So we are going to touch on, not necessarily go in depth, but touch on why it's important for children to be socially and emotionally healthy, which I think as individuals in this particular community with WAFA, we kind of understand already that they need to be socially and emotionally healthy in order to thrive, but we're still going to talk about it. We're going to define what social and emotional competency is, talk about the influence of culture and temperament, and how our culture impacts families as they seek to build these protective factors, and how our own culture shapes how we individually feel, act, and think. We're going to very quickly touch on developmental stages. I'm going to leave a lot of that for next week when we talk about knowledge of parenting and child development. So we're just going to glance over that in relation to social and emotional development, but we'll talk about that more next week. And we'll also kind of touch on the family context. So viewing parents as valuable partners in every phase of the work that we do, and making sure that they are with us each step of the way that we're building this social and emotional competency. We want to make sure that we also touch on the framework that the specific protective factor is based off of, understanding and communicating the importance of how to use that in our daily life. And we'll talk about everyday actions that build that social and emotional competency. And we'll go over that later. In addition to those essential elements or threads, we're also going to have some goals listing characteristics of children who are emotionally healthy and who demonstrate social skills appropriate for their age environment. We're just going to kind of look at that. We're going to identify what is realistic to expect in terms of social and emotional skills for children. We're going to recognize how this protective factor can help make child maltreatment less likely to occur, and give examples of how parents and other caregivers can develop strategies that will help children to grow emotionally and socially. Excuse me. These last couple of weeks, I have not had something to drink with me, and I deeply regretted it. I think I had coffee once, but that just didn't help. All right, so let's really kind of talk about why it's important. So children who have these skills of social and emotional competency are likely to grow up to have healthier behaviors, better peer relationships, and a higher capacity to respond to stress. Helping children to develop these skills can also improve family relationships and prevent abuse and neglect. When parent-child relationships are mutually rewarding, there is greater enjoyment, increased responsiveness, and decreased likelihood of maltreatment. And the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, one of their main focuses is preventing child abuse and neglect, which is why this training very much focuses on that in its goals. In addition to preventing child abuse and neglect, these protective factors build stronger families, which lead to stronger communities. So when you hear prevent child abuse and maltreatment or child abuse and neglect, I want you to kind of make sure that when you're thinking about that, you're thinking we're building stronger communities by doing this. Now, 0 to 3 defines social and emotional competency as the developing capacity to experience and regulate emotions, form secure relationships, and explore and learn, all in the context of the child's family, community, and cultural background. Social and emotional competence of children impacts family and child interactions that help children develop the ability to communicate clearly, recognize and regulate their emotions, and establish and maintain relationships. So having these skills improves that ability. Now, I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, I think that we probably have a mix of parents and providers on the call today, and maybe some of you are both. But I believe that you probably have some exposure to the protective factors because it is ingrained in each step of the Head Start program, and additionally in the ECAT program. But in addition to that, part of what we learn with the knowledge of parenting and child development, and I think my slides are on auto slide for some reason, and I don't know how to make them stop. We learn about child development, we learn about culture and temperament, and how these things can influence behavior and the way that we react to things. So one of the things that this training talks on is how behavior and expression of emotion vary widely with a child's developmental stage and their natural innate temperament. While some aspects of emotion expression are universal, for example, a smile, others are culturally determined. And I believe that you may have seen in the past videos of babies as they respond to people. If they see a person smiling, they'll respond with a smile in return. And that's sort of the universal languages that we speak of. And I'm going to go into more of that next week. Emotion expressions are universal and others are culturally determined. Emotion expression can be influenced by parental and family expectations, which include their culturally based values and goals for children. So what they expect out of their children is generally what their children show, or they know that they are expected to show. Every child has their own individual temperament though, and that's their way of approaching or reacting to the world. And their temperament is biologically based and appears through research to be stable throughout their life. Some children are cheerful and adaptable and easily develop regular routines, like sleeping, walking, eating, and other daily activities that you start with them in infancy. These children tend to respond positively to new situations. Other children are not very adaptable and may not establish routines easily. These children tend to respond negatively to new situations and changes in routines that they do have. Of course, some children fall in between those two extremes, but that's just an example of how temperament can be with children, even in the same family. So there are physical developmental milestones, which we'll kind of address more next week, but there's also emotional ones that as providers you would need to look out for, but also as a parent you need to be aware of. So although these are important milestones, the early years of a child's life also include other kinds of developmental milestones. And hold on just a second, I have lost my chat box, which I'm supposed to be managing. So give me just one moment. Okay, I got it back now. The early years of a child's life also include other kinds of developmental milestones and stages. And these can be challenging to track or identify because they often involve things such as increased self-awareness. It's sometimes hard for parents and even practitioners or providers or individuals who work with families to observe these skills in children. What's important to know is that family relationships are the foundation of that child's social and emotional competency. So even if your temperament doesn't match with your child's temperament, your relationship helps build that foundation for the future. Research has shown us that nurturing and bonding between parent and child from the earliest possible time results in children who are more socially and emotionally competent as children, and later on as adults. So in general, there are two ways that a child's social and emotional competency can reflect or affect their relationship with their family members. So first is reflecting. So children in families experiencing risk factors such as parental substance use, mental health challenges, and domestic violence generally struggle with aggression or anxiety, depression, and hyperactivity. It rates 2 or 3 times that of children not experiencing those risk factors. Children who have experienced maltreatment, witnessed violence, or suffered a traumatic loss will often act out. And I think that as a provider, or even as a parent, you probably recognize what I mean by act out. And I would encourage you to take a moment to think and maybe find another word that you might use to describe that situation. I know that for a long time I used the word tantrum, and then somebody asked me, can we call that something else? And it actually gave me pause, and I realized that tantrum was not a positive word. And so me using it was giving a negative association for my child when I used it. And so I had to find a new way to explain what was happening. And when I did that, her behavior changed. She had heard people say, "You're throwing a tantrum," and it had a negative association. And then when I changed my wording, that negative association stopped. And instead, it created an opportunity for her and I to have a conversation. And even though she was young, it was important that we have that conversation, because it established that later on in the future, when she was having that overwhelming sense of emotion, that she could come to me and we could talk, instead of her needing to throw a tantrum. So if you could take a moment and think, maybe post it in the chat box, maybe give me a different word for tantrum. How else would you describe that behavior? So another thing that may happen for a child is when their behavior is affected. A child's social and emotional competence also influences his or her relationship with caregivers, siblings, and peers. So the negative side of this is most obvious when we look at children with out of control behavior. It takes somebody who is strong, knowledgeable, and committed to stay calm in this face of this persistent, challenging behavior. And it's hard. And I want to take a minute to pull out that if you are currently a parent and you are in this COVID situation where you are at home with your children and you're struggling day in and day out because you are literally home 24/7 with them, it's probably happening. And if that's happening, it's okay. You're not alone. There's a lot of parents that are struggling right now. But also it's okay if your child is not acting out of control. There's space for all. But I wanted to highlight that specifically because I know that there's a lot of parents right now that are overwhelmed. And I just want to encourage you that you're not alone and that it's okay. Because right now, what these children are going through is going to build their resiliency with COVID-19, but it's also going to be a stressor of their generation that other generations don't have. So that's something I just want you to consider as well. Now, when parents or caregivers are struggling with their own stressors, it makes it particularly difficult to deal with a child who is experiencing challenging behaviors. And unfortunately, when that happens, it causes the parents to react in frustrated or irritated. And that actually can give the child the message that they might be bad or unlovable. And these stressors can push parents over the edge into responses that are negative and negatively impact the well-being of their child. It's not intentional. It's just something that happens because we're human. Thankfully, helping build the social and emotional competency between the parents and the children is a step of prevention to help prevent that from happening. And that's what we're talking about. Now, normally about now, I would be showing you a video about something's wrong. And I think that's what you see on your screen. We're actually not going to watch that. I'm thinking in the next couple of weeks, we may go back and watch some of these very key videos that I have for you. But I have found that pulling information out and just kind of giving it to you guys, it's really hard to do the videos or any of the parent stories because they're longer and require more conversation. So once that we have this foundation down of what these things are, I really want to dive deeper into those things with you. So Webster's Dictionary defines a strategy as a careful plan or method for achieving a particular goal, usually over a long period of time. Parents have an important role in facilitating the social and emotional development of their children. And the everyday actions that we're going to discuss in a few moments give more details about what this might look like in your everyday life. as you consider each of the everyday actions. Consider concrete examples of ways that you may already be putting these into place. And remember that small but significant concrete steps are necessary and part of a larger and long-term plan that helps build social and emotional competency of children, thus making our communities stronger. So once again, we look at the structure of this logic model that represents the strengthening families' protective factors. And we see that if state, system, agency, program, and community leaders work across the system to build parent partnerships, deepen knowledge and understanding, shift their practices, policies and systems, and ensure accountability, then we'll see that programs and services provide service to children and families, shift their organizational culture to value and build upon family strengths, make policy changes to support changes in their workplace, implement everyday actions that support families in building protective factors. And it follows that individual workers will then have a knowledge of the protective factors and skills to help families build them, change their approach to relationships with parents, and implement everyday actions that support families in building these protective factors. Then families will be supported to build those 5 protective factors, which will result in stronger families, optimal child development, and reduced likelihood of child abuse and neglect. This is one of my favorite logic models because I feel like it maps it out perfectly, how one box of change can influence so many other strings of change. The strategy that we use to facilitate children's social and emotional development is by providing a nurturing and caring environment, using a structured curriculum for social and emotional development that I'm sure many of you use in your practice. And if you're using it in your practice, then your parents are most likely using it in their daily life with their children. We need to teach parents to support the development and respond to the challenges and observe and respond to signs that development is not on track. And we do that through our everyday interactions and by staying in touch with parents. Now, the Center for the Study of Social Policy identified these following everyday actions that help support the social and emotional competency of children. If we can do one thing every day that helps parents foster their child's social and emotional development, model nurturing support to children, include their children's social and emotional development in their programming, help children develop a positive cultural identity and interact in a diverse society, and respond proactively when social or emotional development seems to need support, then we have done amazing things to help those families be successful and strengthened. And I like to leave this up a little bit for just like a minute for you to think about a couple of ways that you might be able to start implementing an everyday action change that will influence the parents around you. So this would be an opportunity in the larger scale training for you to come up with some concrete, everyday, small, yet significant steps that you can take. And I would love to see them in the chat box if you have them. Also, I do see in the chat box that another word instead of tantrum could be overwhelmed. And I see a comment, emotional dysregulation, which brings to mind a comment that somebody in one of my circles recently brought to mind, or brought to the forefront of our conversation. And essentially what it is that an emotionally upset parent can, oh, that's what it was. A deregulated parent cannot deregulate a child, right? So like if a child's emotions are built up and upset, a parent that is also built up and upset cannot bring them back down to their baseline, cannot bring them back down to a calm space. And I did not do justice to her words because the way she said it was just beautiful. And it was like, ah, yes. But the concept is that if, as parents, as providers, as caregivers, if we work to regulate our emotions and understand our own social and emotional competency, we then can deal and help our children deal with theirs. And I think that that calls to mind, you know, the saying that when people tell kids to use your words to describe your emotions, but the kids need to know what those words are. They need to have been exposed to them in order to use them. So if a child doesn't know what upset means, instead they know mad, you have to help them use those words. They kind of mean the same thing, but in one household, upset might be used, in another household, angry might be used, or something along those lines. And I think that that happens a lot. Kids just don't know the words that we're expecting them to use. So we have to make sure that they know them first. So it is April 27th, but I'm going to mention it again. The last couple of weeks I have mentioned it, and I'm going to mention it again. Even though it's the end of April, I want to bring to attention that April is a very special month where we recognize and elevate the reality of preventing child abuse and neglect across the nation. So it is a national month of recognition of preventing child abuse and neglect. The Parent Partnership Council that I am on has developed several tools to promote strengthening families' protective factors and help parents navigate the COVID-19 crisis. And additionally, they have created some social media tools, some memes and photos that you can download and share both this week and during the rest of the year to help call attention to these protective factors, as well as resources for COVID-19. And they are available at the website that is on your address, which is quite long, so I'm not going to read it off, but it will be available on the WASA website. Additionally, I'm excited to announce that these will soon be translated to Spanish. It's probably the fastest translation time that we've ever had on a resource. So the website that you see will be fantastic for both English and Spanish soon. And there will be a link on the site for that. They said last week that it would be 1 to 2 weeks, so hopefully really soon. So because we've developed this tool and because we're talking about the protective factors right now, I actually wanted to elevate or bring up some questions that we came up with for this tool. And this is one of those moments where if you have something that you would like to share, I would encourage you to unmute yourself and share it, or you can share it in the chat box. So the first question I will read off to you is, how are you talking with your children about their big feelings? And that can be if you're working right now with children in the center, or if you're a parent at home, or if you're talking to kids over Zoom. How are we addressing these big feelings they might be having during this time? Again, this is a new thing for anyone, and it is going to be very significant for their time. Can you share any tools or specific activities that you are using during this crisis that you use when you talk to your children about their emotions? So have you had that conversation with your children, or has it come up, and what are you doing to address it? And I will try and be on the lookout for any mics that open or unmute. If you have something to say, it may be faster to say it in the chat box for me, and then I'll look for you. And then Marisela, if you have some comments, please feel free to let me know. Fatima, did you have something that you wanted to share?
No, really, sorry, I didn't mute myself.
That's okay, I
I
was
was
just
muted.
checking. Okay, so the next question is, how are you balancing virtual nurturing?
Victoria,
so
we have
screen
some, I'm sorry, Victoria, we have someone that wants to share.
Oh, fantastic, thank you.
Adelante, Juliana. I want to share that I'm having a lot of difficulty at home. What I'm doing is motivate them, my children. So instead of forcing them to go to school or doing e-learning, so just encourage them or motivate them to have a time to do some extra activities and also I understand that the way that I react myself when I do a tantrum or something like that, or when they have react, it is a lot of times, it depends on the reaction that I as an adult have. So if I am asking them to drink some water or if they have ate, because a lot of times we don't consider if that child is tired, if he has a good sleep, or just if they're thirsty or they're hungry. It's just that they don't know how to express when they're hungry or they're thirsty, and they don't have the things close to there. And a lot of times it's like, if I see them very overwhelmed, I just ask them if they want some water, if they want to eat something. And I also try to recognize if I see that they feel frustrated. I don't ask them, do not cry, or they don't be afraid. I just talk to them. Why are they feeling like that? Because when we don't allow that way of expression, then we're not helping them, and we create a bigger conflict on that. So I just try to ask them to express and help them how to express their feeling in a very positive way. I ask them to do some coloring, or if they don't want to talk.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I saw some heads nodding, like yes, absolutely. We definitely need to help our children check in with themselves, and just check in. Do you need a drink? Are you hungry? Are you supposed to be taking a nap right now? Would you normally be outside at recess? These are things that we have to help them try to identify, which can be really hard if we're not identifying themselves, like for ourselves. I think in one of the behavioral classes that I was in, they talked about noticing your own behavior and asking yourself those questions. For example, have I eaten a meal today? Did I sleep well last night? Have I drank enough coffee? Have I drank enough water? Is this why my reactions to things have changed? Or is it just the situation? And I think that we need to help children remember that and guide them through that process of identifying what the core issue is. And I definitely resonate with, sometimes we just have to color and take a minute and back away from whatever topic is causing that strong sense of emotion. And I think right now, especially, we need to give children the space and the opportunity, the space and grace is what I call it. The space to have whatever's happening happen, and the grace and the peace of mind to know that we can come back from that and work through it. We have some comments. We have house meetings to talk about anything new we have heard or concerned with during the day. I feel like the kids are feeling more emotional. So when I notice they are upset, we go to a quiet place and snuggle, and I ask them how they are and if they're okay. And let's say, somebody else mentioned, we say, you're showing me that you're upset because you are crying, or by making a frowning face, to help identify those feelings with those words. So another thing is this e-learning concept. Some children adapt to that very well. It's their preferred method. And some children, this is completely new. And it's a new process for their parents. It's a new process for their children. So it's, I have a friend who owns a preschool. It's a private preschool, and she is doing preschool over Zoom, which is something she never thought in her 20+ years that she would ever be doing. And so I go back to that question, how are you balancing that virtual nurturing with emotional and physical nurturing? So how are you balancing the two? And what do your children seem to need the most of right now? So in this time where we are separating ourselves from others to follow these guidelines for social distancing, how are we balancing that need for children to have that social contact with their peers and with another adult with the emotional context of being with their parent or their caregiver? How are we balancing those needs? And what are some ways that you're celebrating and acknowledging your child's unique strengths during this time? So I think that that's one thing a parent in my daughter's class, or a parent of a child in my daughter's class, is working with their child to learn music online. Another one is helping that child film videos of them building Legos step by step, which is a thought process that not all children can do. Well, first I take the base, and then I put on a 4-piece, and then I put on a 6-piece. Like, these are things that are learning opportunities, and we have to find a way to combine them, to share them with their electronic classroom, and also kind of bridge that time where we're also learning with them and helping them process. At home, we have come up with a different theme days to do after our work time, such as Monday movie, Tuesday craft, Wednesday walk. So that's one thing that you can suggest with the parents that you work with, or maybe even just your friends and family. You come up with themes to follow. So what definitely sticks out to me with all of the comments that we've had today is that it takes a two-pronged approach: the parents, the family, and the providers. So everyone around this child that we are working with, promoting and facilitating development of social and emotional concepts. And there is a lot that I can cover about this, but one of the things that I have seen is parents putting this into action. What you actually see on the screen right now is a link to another resource by the Birth Parent National Network. There's a website address that's also very long, but I'll make sure that WASA has that. And they provide resources for birth parents, foster parents, kinship givers, all families and organizations to help develop positive social and emotional development and the other protective factors as well. If you're interested in joining them, they do take applications. There's no fee, and it provides a lot of opportunities to promote parent voice in future policy changes and developmental stages, or developmental changes in how we approach education. So what you see in front of you is called the pyramid model for providing social and emotional competency in infants and young children. I'm going to touch on it more next week, but I wanted to bring it up and just show you what it is. The first level is the universal or primary level. Next is the targeted or secondary level, and the third is indicated or tertiary level. So essentially, it's the first level of positive relationships and supportive environments. All children receive that opportunity. some children will need to move to the next phase where they might have challenging behaviors or other risk factors that might require more specific curricula or more specific social problem solving and more in-depth work. And then the third level is like a tertiary sense where only a small percentage of children are, and they have persistent challenging behaviors that aren't necessarily addressed with those previous methods. And here, parents and educators can seek outside help from behavioral specialists and things like that. I know that there's a lot of programs that work with mental health agencies and behavior specialists to help provide for those children. But this is an excellent image to show the different levels, but that we all need that positive relationship and supportive environment to build that competency. It's not just the children who might have difficult behaviors, it's everybody. And I see that there is a conversation happening in chat, so I'm not going to read it, but I love that that's happening. Please be there for each other and be supportive of each other. I love that. I think that's great. So some of the ways that you can help your children with social and emotional competency is saying things like, that's a cool way that you, and then you fill in the blank with whatever it was that they did. Possibly, I'm so appreciative that you, and whatever it is that they did, take the trash out, folded their own laundry, things like that. It really pleases me when you, and then you fill in the blank with what they did. You've really grown up, and I see that because you did, and you fill it in with whatever it was that they did. But in addition to supporting the children, I do want to put a caveat on that and remind you that it's also a really good time to build up the social and emotional competency of the parents that you work with by telling them, like, you're doing such a great job with your child when you, and you fill in with what it was that you witnessed them doing. You have so much energy and enthusiasm about your children, and it's obvious when you, and fill in whatever it was that you saw them do that showed that behavior. And then something really important is just showing that empathy and encouraging them that you can acknowledge what they're going through. So again, we're talking about during this COVID time, it's hard for a lot of people, and saying things like, I realize that this month has been really hard. If there's anything that we can do, we're here for you and your family. And recognizing that doesn't necessarily have to mean something physical. It can be simply something like providing that emotional connection to another human being, or providing them a resource to help address their needs. Right now, it's really critical that we are able to show our empathy. And additionally, right now, I would show you this video by Brene Brown, and you've probably seen it. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But if you have not, I would recommend that you look it up. Again, it's Brene Brown, and the video that you're looking for is Empathy. And there are some subtitled versions that are available on YouTube in different languages. So if you need it translated, that is available, but I would suggest that you watch it because I think it defines empathy very well. And normally we would go into building emotional vocabulary. I know that there's a lot of books that Head Start and ECAP programs use to help children develop that social and emotional competency. I've worked with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families with their Unsung Hero Awards every year. And they always give out a book to the children that helps them with one of the protective factors or address social and emotional growth. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is through literature that we have, things that are readily available. This is an image from a book, and we have a little clip that we would normally do. I'm not going to show it to you right now because, again, time constraints, and I want to appreciate your guys' time and don't want to go over too much. But it is important to note that when you read to a child, when you interact with a child and you give them the vocabulary that they need to express their social and emotional development, then we are giving them the key to helping communicate that. There's a quote by Mary Gordon from The Roots of Empathy, and it is, "Just as a child can't sing along with the group when she doesn't know the words to the song, children who do not have the vocabulary to express feelings cannot participate effectively in social context." It's a beautiful quote, and I don't have it on a screen, I think, but it is so appropriate, I think, when we're talking about children being equipped to deal with social situations. They need to be able to communicate, and understanding and recognizing their emotions is a key part of that. So I passed a parent's story. His name is Tim Ryan, and he was on the Parent Partnership Council. He also happens to work with early learning. And it was a story about being a witness to his child being bullied. And it goes over the social and emotional growth of that child. Again, we don't have the time to cover it today, but I want you to know that we do have a lot of really good content that I'm going to bring up again later. So I left it in there as a reminder to me to make sure that I bring it up with you guys next time. So when we think about nurturing and supporting children's social and emotional competency, I want you to just kind of think about a satisfying relationship in your life, or perhaps a satisfying relationship when you were a child. And maybe just take a minute to think about what made that relationship so successful or so strong in your life. And maybe think about the messages that you received from that relationship, that positive relationship that helped build that feeling a part of your identity. And then maybe think about ways that you might be able to help children also build those satisfying relationships, those positive relationships, and how that might impact their emotional and social development. Also, I'd like to just elevate that the world children wake up to each morning is vastly different than it was 10 years ago, even 3 months ago. And research has shown that over time, relationships with consistent, caring, and attuned adults are the key in ensuring optimal outcome and well-being of children. Although children's primary caregivers have the best opportunity to nurture children in this way, we really do have to ask ourselves, what is the role of a provider in our children or family serving program? And what is the role of the community? Because the reality is that we all can make a difference in children's lives. We can all make a difference in the building of children's social and emotional competencies, as well as we all can make a difference in each child's life. And we can do that. Nurturing and promoting children's emotional and social competency, oh, I said that backwards. Social and emotional competency requires commitment from everyone in a child's life. And I know that you're all committed because you're on this call right now. And so I want to thank you for doing that. Families who intentionally work to build protective factors can move through any difficult circumstance, be it from a small thing to a large thing like COVID-19. And we're all learning what that looks like right now. And then we can move forward to see our children continue to thrive even with these difficulties. So that is what we covered today. It's already 3:57, which I feel like there's just never enough time to tell you guys all the information that I have. And I do have so much more. I do want to open it up to you for comments. This is what the Children's Trust Fund Alliance does. They ensure that states have strong and effective prevention funds, and they initiate and engage in national efforts to help states with those prevention funds, and they promote support systems for families. And if you need any more information about this specific training, if you're not able to tune in next week for Knowledge of Parenting and Child Development, I would encourage you to check out the website. But these slides will also be available on the WASA website. I'll be sending the PowerPoint to Katie at the end. And I don't see any comments, and I don't see anybody unmuting themselves, but I will stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions or comments about social and emotional competency of children. You are welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Hey, Katie, I think